zvuk len tak To na kraj, to je Kamil, to je s ňou tiež, to je akože jej pomocník. Ale
vtedy, keď na ňu bolo zle, vy ste stali za mnou teraz.
podľa mňa minútu.
Príjemné dopoludne, vážené dámy a
Good morning,
páni.
ladies and gentlemen.
Dovolte mi vás privítať na
Allow me to
tlačovej
welcome
konferencii
you
pri
at the
príležitosti jarného
press
zasadnutia
meeting
parlamentného
at the occasion of
zhromaždenia
the
NATO,
Spring
ktoré sa
Parliamentary
bude
Assembly of
konať
NATO, which will be held here in the Bratislava Castle. At the same time, allow me to welcome the head of the permanent representation of the National Council of the Slovak Republic in the PA of NATO, Martin Fedor. Welcome. The President of Parliament Assembly of NATO, Madeleine Moon. And last but not least, David Hobbs, the Secretary General of the Parliamentary Assembly of NATO. The participants will, over the course of 4 days, discuss the relevant important topics such as security, arms control, artificial intelligence, political cooperation, and other important issues. Such a meeting was last held in Bratislava in 2004. We are meeting today again, and this makes our meeting ever more important because we are reminding the 70th anniversary of NATO creation and also the 15th anniversary of Slovakia joining NATO. I would now like to pass the floor to Martin Fedor, the head of Slovak delegation in the Parliamentary Assembly of NATO. Please, the floor is yours. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very glad that you have joined us here. Today we are starting with an event of size and importance we haven't had here for the last 15 years. In Bratislava Castle, more than 600 delegates will meet, and we are starting with our deliberations today. These delegates are coming not only from the member states of NATO, but also from our friends. We will have a long list of experts who will brief us and share with us their insight on issues related to security and defense. It seems that these issues are broadening up every year because we have to bear in mind more and more the issues of cybersecurity, of cyber warfare, but also climate change is more and more impacting security and defense cooperation. It's true, as Madam Moderator has said, that we are very honored for having the occasion of hosting the Spring Parliamentary Assembly, especially in this year, 70 years since the formation of NATO. And the alliance has been on a journey. The transformation of the strategic interests of the overall thinking have changed a lot over this course. The global security context was much different than what we are experiencing today. 15 years ago, when we joined NATO, NATO was much more focused on operations outside of the territory of NATO countries, fighting terrorism on a global scale. After 2008, after the Georgian War, but also especially after 2014, when the Ukrainian conflict started, we also had to adapt our thinking. The strategic thinking of the alliance started to shift, or perhaps even return back to the foundation of NATO, back to the days when NATO was formed. The main role of the alliance when it was formed was the capacity to defend the territory of the member states of NATO. And again, after these 15 years, or perhaps even more, we seem to be returning back. So it is an elliptical trajectory, and now we are returning to the basic principle of NATO, to the basic mission of NATO. We are more and more focused on the capacity of NATO to be able to defend ourselves in terms of security in any dimension, from any corner of the world, from any angle of perspective. We need to be sufficiently aligned, sufficiently unified in order to be able to defend ourselves jointly, what to be ready for and how to defend ourselves in the years to come. And this is the role of such large meetings, like, for example, the Parliamentary Assembly of NATO. Last but not least, it is also very important for us to show and demonstrate also to the Slovak public in general that the system of collective defense is something without which we wouldn't be able to enjoy peace and prosperity in Europe. This is important for Slovakia because the basic security guarantees are anchored with the collective defense principle. Without the collective defense, we wouldn't be able to defend our territory and our country. So for me, this is vital. It is very important to send a very clear signal to the Slovak public that we have our partners, we have our allies, we have our friends, with whom we are on one mission, and we are capable and willing to defend ourselves jointly. So this is going to be the basic theme and the basic line of communication over these 4 days during the Parliamentary Assembly meeting here in Bratislava. As we are representing the parliamentary dimension of NATO, I would like to recall the share of the Slovak Parliament's activity in supporting NATO and supporting collective defense, because already in 2017 we have approved the declaration of the defense policy of Slovakia, in which we've stated that the importance of collective defense is increasing in order to defend the individual members, the individual allies, and we have also declared the willingness to gradually increase our spending on defense in line with our obligations. Also, due to this supportive part of our declaration, I'd like to state that already this year in Slovakia we should reach the share of defense expenditures on GDP at a level of 1.73 percentage points of the GDP of Slovakia, and we have a credible plan to achieve 2 percentage points in 2024, or perhaps even 2022, given the modernization programs launched by the Slovak government in the recent years. So such relevant and credible plan of increasing spending on defense is a crucial precondition in order to be a legitimate partner, to be a trusted partner in the alliance, in order not to be just a free rider in the alliance, but to contribute with our share to the principle of joint and collective defense. So much as the introductory remarks on my behalf, and now I would like to pass the floor to Madam President. Please, the floor is yours, Madam Moon.
The floor is yours.
Is that better? That is definitely better. Okay. Though, as a British parliamentarian, let me tell you, I'm used to shouting. Martin has talked a lot there about the agenda in terms of NATO and its defence and security responsibilities. But this is the Parliamentary Assembly. So I'm going to come at this from a different perspective, if I may, so that you're not hearing the same thing from both of us. It's very difficult for countries to know what their politicians are up to when they're abroad, because you don't hear how you are seen. For the NATO Parliamentary Assembly, Slovakia and its representatives are your voice. They're how we see you as a country. We're how we learn to trust you. And it's how we interpret your role in the world. And we do that through our personal conversations and our interactions, as well as by your actions. So we know you as a key partner because of your engagement in Afghanistan. We know about your technical competence as a nation in terms of your military force, and your willingness to work on the front line in terms of your personnel. I'm getting a gesture. In terms of your personnel in Latvia. NATO is, if in fact the whole of Europe is at a strange time. We are facing new threats militarily, as we have seen in Georgia and Ukraine. So we've had to build up and tackle our defensive capability and to make sure that we have the kinetic force and the interoperability that makes sure that together we can protect the democracies that we've built together. But there is another threat that we're all facing, and it's why a parliamentary assembly is critical. And that is a political threat. It's about actually the most important part of membership of NATO, because everybody thinks of NATO in terms of its fighting force. And that's rightly so, because our capability is the strength that surrounds us, that gives us our collective confidence. But if that is not backed up by our values, if that isn't backed up in our belief in democracy and the rule of law and our commitment to human rights, in tackling corruption, in building strong and stable societies, we are nothing. And we haven't done enough to explain those political messages, I don't think. We haven't done enough to talk about our values. We talk about it all the time when we meet in the Parliamentary Assembly. And let me tell you, some of our conversations are fairly robust. But if you're in a family, and Slovakia is very much a part of that family, you can have those robust conversations and keep the friendship, keep the family together. So the second thing that we're doing, and you've seen the official agenda, you've seen all of the experts and the technical subjects we'll be looking at about the challenges that we face. But the other important issue that's going to be taking place here, and which is much more difficult for journalists to be aware of, are the personal conversations, the personal networks, the personal understanding at a time when Europe is at a change and flux in terms of our failure. And I stand up for this because I'm of a different generation to Martin. My generation has failed to keep people connected to why democracy has been the critical way in which we have kept our peace and security in Europe for the longest time in our history. If I see something in the British press about Slovakia, and I'm thinking, really? I don't go on the internet. I ring Martin. For him, he bears the responsibility for being the voice of Slovakia. So I have go-to people that if I'm unsure about something or I need a piece of information, I know who I trust, who I reach out to, where I get my information. That is critical. I arrived here this morning and I was telling Martin, he said, everything all right? And I said, no, I'm very unhappy. I said, oh, what's wrong? Is it not okay? And he said, well, we're going to have to redo London. We can't beat this. look at what you have showcased of Slovakia. Wow. I'm pretty stunned already. It isn't until you walk the streets, it isn't until you're in the countryside that you really get a grasp of what a country is. So it's vital that we're here, because we can talk in crowded rooms anywhere in the world, but until you actually visit, until you're there and you're breathing the air and eating the food and chatting to the people in the hotel, you don't really get a handle in the same way. So I am absolutely delighted to be here. In the short time that I've been in the country, I've been in the hotel, I've been involved in a podcast, and now I'm here, and I love it already. And I was saying to Martin, I'm coming back in the summer for a wedding of a friend of mine from London who is Slovakian. And Martin said, "What's his name?" And I told him, he said, "Oh, I know him really well. He comes from my village." Wow. Let me tell you, I'm a Welsh MP. I get that. So I want to thank you for hosting us. I'm looking forward to the usual robust conversations that we have as a parliamentary assembly. I'm a geek. I love the experts. I love an expert. I love deepening my knowledge and understanding. But also, I'm going to love being here and getting a wider and deeper understanding of Slovakia, your perspective on Europe, on NATO, and the family that we all belong to. And I look forward to your questions.
Ďakujeme, teraz by som rada odozdala slovo generálnemu
pass the floor to
tajomníkovi
the
parlamentného
Secretary General
zhromaždenia
of the
Davidovi
Parliamentary Assembly of NATO, Mr. David Hobbs.
Thank you very much. I don't really have very much to add to that. As a long-term bureaucrat involved in the NATO Parliamentary Assembly, it is, as the President's pointed out, remarkable to see how valuable it is in terms of the networking opportunities that it provides and the contacts that it provides amongst members of Parliament. In practical terms, you might say, well, what's the point? You know, there's NATO, there's the NATO Parliamentary Assembly. I get NATO, but the NATO Parliamentary Assembly? Well, it is absolutely vital in our alliance, which is based on, as our President pointed out, fundamental common values, democracy, rule of law, human rights, that parliamentarians are involved in the NATO framework. In practical terms, just purely practical terms, NATO relies on the armed forces of its members. The budgets of all the NATO nations, of course, are decided by its parliaments. If our national armed forces are to be used in a NATO operation, in most of our countries, it's a parliamentary decision which is taken to approve the authorization of the use of those forces. As we are undergoing now, the process of ratification of enlargement for a new member to come in, North Macedonia's ratification process is underway. Crucially, and one of the things that we're watching very closely at this session, is progress of ratification through our member parliaments so that we can make sure that that process stays on track. So this organisation makes sure that within each of our national parliaments there's a group of parliamentarians that is fully up to speed with the NATO agenda, understands what's going on and can take those decisions and promote those decisions within their national parliaments. As you will have seen from all the material, I can see all our lovely leaflets and things around, so I won't repeat what's on the agenda. You will see that all the subjects which NATO is addressing in terms of maintaining its security, maintaining its partnerships, will be discussed. And included in that, by the way, is the notion that parliamentarians are on the front line. The values that we represent as a parliamentary organisation are under threat. You will see elections where there are efforts to undermine them. We see people trying to undermine our democratic institutions. This type of organisation enables people on the front line to talk about their experiences and share those experiences and counter those forces. And I'll give you one practical instance of the value of the organisation. We have a strong American delegation coming here to this session. If you talk to our American delegation, as you know, the way particularly the American system functions, but many others, in the role that they play in the formulation and implementation of foreign and defence policy, they need up-to-date information, and they will tell you that for them, one of the most valuable sources of information is precisely the contacts that they have with their peers, because for them, talking to their fellow parliamentarians from Slovakia, from the United Kingdom, from all the other countries, is shaping their view within their own national parliaments. So the organisation plays an absolutely invaluable role, if you like, in the policy making and shaping process within the NATO framework.
Ďakujeme pekne. Teraz nech sa páči priestor pre novinárske otázky.
Thank
Ako
you
prvá
very much.
Teatri.
Now it is floor for your questions. Teatri TV as first. Well, the question was out of the microphone. The first question pertained to hybrid war, and the second question is how do you react to the information that is served by the Serbia and Russia that NATO is responsible for the tensions in Montenegro, in Kosovo.
Tému kybernetickej bezpečnosti za naozaj.
The cybersecurity is a topic that is one of the most important topics. It is not only new, and NATO adopted the thesis, the cyberspace becomes yet another possible dimensions for conflict. Of course, there are ground forces, there is air force, but cyberspace is yet another space for potential conflict. For me personally, the cyberspace is a space that demonstrates its strength by shaping the public opinion, and for the organization of democratic states such as NATO, the coherence of our own decision is very important. And our competitors, I don't want to use the word enemies, but our competitors that do not like our organizations are, of course, working on dividing the public opinion, of rendering people more insecure, of influencing politicians when they are adopting decisions. And there are undermining or trying to undermine the decision-making process that are crucial that this alliance of democratic states remains effective. So this is the most important aspect. Thank you very much for the question.
I want to take you back to what I said earlier about my personal sense of failure. I think we've talked a lot about NATO as a military entity. There are issues that we have to grasp as a military force as new technologies come along. And cyber is one of those. It's a new domain, as is space. So we're having to step up to deal with a new form of threat that allows competitor nations to reach inside the home, inside people's safe space, into their bedroom, telling them things that make them doubt their government, doubt their way of life, doubt their values. But we also have the political realm. Now, disinformation has been operating as old as the hill. Throughout centuries, there has been disinformation. The difference is we now are in an interconnected world that allows another state to reach into your home and tell you, don't trust your government, don't trust your values, but also to turn off your energy supply, to turn off your connection to news and information, to stop you talking to people to test things out. It can turn off your access to the just-in-time food deliveries to your local supermarket. So we have to go back to what I see as our failure, my generation's failure, which is to remind us about the whole of society resilience. It is no longer the responsibility of government to protect its citizens exclusively. It is the responsibility of government to make citizens aware of their responsibilities to be on the alert and to prepare themselves for being on the front line of people who want to destabilize your country, who want to take you backwards, away from a time where there is open communications, where you can say what the heck you like within the rule of law, where you can think whatever you like in your own headspace and live your own life free. They want to take that away from you. But they have learnt something that we're a bit slow to learn, that actually you can take that away not through invading. You don't have to come over the border with rockets. You don't have to come over the border with tanks and even with little green men. You can do it through the ballot box. And we have to get back to that whole of society resilience while keeping our forces strong and capable. But we have to explain to people, and that's the political nature of the Parliamentary Assembly. It's why politics plays as big a part in our defense and security as our military capability. And it's why the Parliamentary Assembly is so critical, because we share that understanding about the values, about the need to communicate with the people we represent, about why we do what we do, and to deal with the disinformation, and to become actually a trusted source of information. I hope that helps.
Just in narrow bureaucratic terms, the Science and Technology Committee's main report, drafted by Congresswoman Susan Davis, is specifically on cyber defense. And in fact, cyber issues feature very heavily among the agendas of several of our committees from year to year. Currently, that's one particular report there in that Science and Technology Committee. We also have several speakers who will be addressing, if you like, the concept of modern deterrence, talking about managing conflict, managing hostility, if you like, below the level of conflict. And there are case studies, of course, such as Ukraine. Regarding the specific question about Russian disinformation, I think it was Mark Twain that said that a lie can be halfway around the world while the truth is still putting its boots on. Within the Assembly, we do look very closely at how the truth can get its boots on a bit faster and how we deal with what is an extraordinarily effective campaign of Russian disinformation. And the Assembly does work very closely, as does NATO, in countering that and trying to get, if you like, the facts out there without resorting to the same tactics, making sure that what we use is fact, information, and verifiable truth, rather than invention, fabrication, and misinformation, disinformation.
Ďakujeme. Televízia Joj.
Thank you very much. Joj, Slovak TV. Peter Petrus, a question to Madam Moon. You are from the United Kingdom, where for already a certain time the process of Brexit has been rather demanding and chaotic, and it defines the relationship with the UK and the European Union, but it has an overlap. If Brexit was to follow the hard Brexit route, are there any voices in the United Kingdom which would question the membership of the United Kingdom in NATO? Are there any repercussions of Brexit to the NATO membership, or if there was a hard Brexit scenario, will the UK remain as a solid member of NATO?
I thought I'd travelled far enough away to get away from Brexit. The one thing I would say to you is there is not a cat in hell's chance of Britain leaving NATO. Let's get that absolutely clear. No matter what the tensions have been, and there's been a lot of fake news and disinformation, let me tell you, in the UK about the European Union. Some of it coming from the mouths of some of our senior politicians too. But Britain is totally 150% committed to its membership of NATO. And it's one of the reasons I wanted to become president. I wanted to make it absolutely clear we're not going anywhere. Now, Brexit is a challenge to democracy as well. But for those of you who are able to get the parliamentary channel, have a look at what's happening. There's a sense of me that's quite proud of what we're doing, because nobody has actually crossed the chamber and slugged anybody yet, got very close, you know. But we are doing what parliaments do. We are arguing it out, and we're voting. So democracy is alive and well. We have a speaker who is making it very clear that government is not making this decision. Parliament is making this decision. And that every parliamentarian is equal. I have the same number of votes as a Prime Minister, 1. And if anything, Brexit should be a prime example of the challenge that we all face, of where that spirit of unease is at the moment across Europe. Some of it generated by false information and a weakening in trust in the rule of law, in information that tells you don't trust them, they're liars, they're in it for themselves, they're in it for the money, they're feathering their own nests. And I'm sure there are people out there that are like that. But I don't meet them in the Parliamentary Assembly of NATO. I see people dedicated to their countries and dedicated to protecting the values of their countries and the security of their countries. So Brexit is what can happen to a country when it loses faith in itself and it thinks the past is a safer country. The past is not a safer country. The future is a difficult country because it's unknown, it's unsafe, and the movement of people, the climate change, the disinformation, the new technology that's moving at a hugely fast pace, it makes you uncomfortable. But bear with us, we'll get there. And what is absolutely clear, and the British Parliament has said, we've already voted on this, and there are those who keep wanting to raise it again, saying, hard Brexit, hard Brexit. We're not having a hard Brexit. Let me tell you, the British Parliament will never vote for a hard Brexit. That is a vote for madness. And despite how crazy Britain might look at the moment, we are not mad. We are fighting a democratic battle. And bear with us, we will get there. We've done worse things in our history. We've been in worse places in our history. And we've come through, and I believe and I trust in the basic sense of Britain's Parliament and its people that we'll get there. But in terms of NATO, don't worry about us. We're not going anywhere. We are as committed and as, I hope, valuable an ally as you can hope to have.
Ďakujeme RTV.
Thank you very much. Slovak Public TV. I have a question to Mr. Fedor. Regarding the fact that Slovak Republic is also has the presidency in OSCE, will you use this Parliamentary Assembly of NATO in Bratislava to also present certain themes which are also relevant and important for OSCE? Ukraine is a key theater because that's where we have the biggest observer mission. I have also seen a list of interesting speakers here on the Parliamentary Assembly. So is this also an important platform to discuss issues relevant to OSCE?
Áno, určite toto je tiež téma, ktorej sa nebudeme môcť
Yes, quite clearly this is an issue which we can't get around. Also for our allies, our Slovak perspective will be very interesting also due to the fact that, as you have correctly stated, we have the presidency in OSCE and we are a neighbor country to Ukraine, where many friends of ours, allies of ours, are relying on us, believing that we have better info, we have a better intel, we have better insight into what is happening in Ukraine, perhaps a closer look than they might have in Western capitals. So we will definitely present our priorities of our presidency in the OSCE during the meetings which we will have. In these working groups, we will present the perspectives of our administration, also of our executive. The Minister of Foreign Affairs, the Minister of Defense will speak here of Slovakia, and also we will have a special contribution by the State Secretary of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, which will be specially dedicated to OSCE and also to the possibilities that Slovakia has in its role as the presidency. As you know, our presidency is focused on specific support to individual people in critical situations and in crisis scenarios, especially and most importantly in Ukraine, to focus the endeavor of the international community to support to specific people. You might remember Minister of Foreign Affairs who has presented these priorities at great length. This will be the part of the proceedings of the Parliamentary Assembly of NATO.
Ďakujeme. Sú nejaké ďalšie otázky?
Madam Moderator, may I just say a few words? You've seen the OSCE is playing a big part in the conference this time, and rightly so, because, in fact, David and I met last night and talked about our need for closer links and how hopefully I will be able to also attend OSCE's conference. So we're looking at building those closer links, and I think it's absolutely critical that we do. In relation to Ukraine, again, we didn't see that coming, and it's that forward-looking. We failed there, and that's something that we have to learn lessons from, but also I am going to Ukraine at the end of the end of June, and hope to meet the new president. And we need to establish a whole new set of communications and dialogues there, because we hope Ukraine will be joining the family in the future. That's what we're aiming and hopefully working towards. So yes, Ukraine is critical, and I've met the Ukrainian delegation every meeting to talk about where things are, what is the help that we're needing, what do we need to be aware of. And that's those conversations that take place outside of the formal sessions that I've stressed as so important, so that those friendships are there, those communications are there. You have a new administration that's coming in, one that we need to get to know, and they need to get to know us. And that's part of the responsibilities that we'll be facing head on as soon as we can. So we're very aware of the problems that we have, and thank you for raising that question, because it's a very real one for us. Thank you.
Ďakujeme, ak už nie sú ďalšie otázky.
Thank you. If there are no further questions, thank you very much for your attention, and I wish you a very pleasant day.